Hello everyone, this is Taliesin McKnight, and this is Saint Expedite, and that's why I'm wearing red today, is I'm working with Saint Expedite right now. So this is a very powerful saint, Saint Expedite. The name Expedite, automatically when you hear expedite, think like expedited shipping. It speeds up. And if you look at his image, Saint Expedite, by the way, the saints were human beings that died. So they're the sacred dead. So the thing is, they're in practicing magic, there are making connections with different types of spiritual forces if you're working with the spirit model, because there's the mental or the consciousness model, spirit model, and energy models of magic. But those that work with spirits, connecting with angels or demons, the dead, saints, elemental beings, making connections with planetary intelligences, making connections with supernatural forces and working with them. Now, the thing about the saints is that they were human beings that died. They were human beings. Of course, they're also folk saints. But Saint Expedite, he holds up a cross that says hodie. It means today in Latin. And he stamps upon a crow that says cross, which in Latin means tomorrow. So he stamps down tomorrow in favor of today. So this is a great saint for procrastinators, Saint Expedite. And Saint Expedite is good for so many things. Quick results. When you need something very quickly, Saint Expedite is the person to go to. Saint Expedite. His feast day is April the 19th. And I made videos on Saint Expedite in St. Lucie back in 2014. And that was back when I was really focused on learning about hoodoo and practicing hoodoo and kind of sharing everything about making floor washes and things like that. That was back around 2014. I was making videos on floor washes and, spirit dolls and spiritual baths, things like that. But anyway, Saint Expedite, that's why I'm wearing red today. So very powerful saint for quick results. But today I'm going to talk about the saints in general. By the way, I wanted to show y'all, this is the Virgin Mary that I received when I was 16 years old. I was a teenager. And I've had this Virgin Mary statue, since I was a teenager. It was a family gift. So this statue I've had, my entire adult life. So anyways, we're going to be talking about saints. And, it's something that I haven't really focused on for a while. It's not anything that I've done, but there's so much power there. The saints, I don't think it matters what your beliefs are. When it comes to the saints, I don't think it matters if you're a Christian or if you're a pagan or even an agnostic or atheist. It doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist or a Hindu. It really doesn't matter. In fact, Saint Expedite in Reunion, in an island off the coast of Africa, and by the way, his shrine is painted red. For Saint Expedite, his veneration is connected with the Hindu goddess Kali, so there's some syncretism there. But anyways, working with the saints, this is something that they're very quick to act. Like I said, I don't think it matters if you're a pagan or a Christian. I don't think it matters what your religion or religious beliefs. You can be Wiccan, pagan, whatever you are, and work with the saints. You could be a Hindu. It really doesn't matter. The thing about my personal view of magic is it's about results. So I don't think it matters what your spiritual beliefs. The saints are very quick to act. And that's why they're so popular in the magic community. That's why so many people work with saints, because they're very quick. And they don't seem to really care what your beliefs are. So, for example, it's very good to have spiritual allies. And you're making up like your own personal group of spirits that interact with you. But the saints are very quick to act. That's why so many people do spells and magic with the saints. They don't seem to mind the magic. It's very effective and quick. Like Saint Expedite, he is very effective. Saint Expedite. Saint Barbara is powerful for protection. Saint Barbara is very interesting. You often see images of Saint Barbara holding a sword. Often she has a crown upon her head, and behind her is a tower in lightning. In some of the images, it looks like the tower is being struck by lightning. And again, she holds the sword, and she is associated with protection and getting justice. So if you've been done really wrong and you really are innocent, you can call on Saint Barbara to get justice when you're not getting it anywhere else. So, but people have to be careful. You don't play with saints just to go around, getting payback on people. But Saint Barbara is very effective. If someone's bothering you, she's a protectress. So if you think of the different spirits that you work with, each one serves a role, spirit allies. So it's very important to have some type of warrior or warriors. And I don't mean that in the sense like in Santeria or anything, but I mean just in the sense of having some type of spirits or deities or powers that can be a destructive force and a protective force. So a very powerful warrior to have on your side is Saint Barbara. Again, she holds the sword. She has the crown upon her head. And notice the martial quality of protection and justice, all of this, right? And then a lot of modern people familiar with tarot, they look at images of Saint Barbara and they see what looks like a lightning-struck tower, which is ruled by Mars. So it's interesting. But the reason for the tower and the lightning imagery is because Saint Barbara was locked in a tower by her father. Again, saints were flesh and blood human beings like you and me at one time. And like I said, I don't think it matters what your religion. You could be a pagan, a Hindu. You could be any tradition and work with saints. They're magic. It's very powerful, very effective. Saints were human beings that know the human condition. They're closer to us. They're more human in a sense than the gods or elementals or anything else. They're literally human beings that are beatified, the sacred dead. And so the sacred dead. So this is, in my opinion, working with saints is a type of necromancy. By the way, today I'm going to talk about how to make a talisman with your saints. So I'll go into kind of a simple setup and how to consecrate or create a talisman that's associated with your saint. So, but the story of Saint Barbara is her father wanted to force her into a marriage, and she didn't want to do it. So he locked her into a tower. And she is a Christian saint. The story goes that she was a martyr. Not only did he lock her in a tower because she refused to this marriage he arranged, but she converted to Christianity, and the story goes her father had had her tortured before the tribunal. And at the end, her own father cut off her head. So her own father, her own dad, her own father locked her in a tower and then finally cut off her head. Now, after that happened, he was struck by lightning and his body was consumed into flames. So that's the lightning strike. It's divine justice. He was hurting an innocent person, St. Barbara, and he didn't get away with it. He got struck by lightning and was consumed into flames. So you get the idea of St. Barbara being used for protection and also, you know, spiritual warfare. But you don't play with saints. There's not something to play with. But if you feel that you've really been unjust, you could ask, not command, ask her if, you know, she will get justice for you. So Saint Barbara, very powerful. Like I said, if you're going to have your group of spiritual allies, it's important to have powerful protectors. Saint Lucy, you'll often see her with a plate with eyes. A lot of these saints had really horrible deaths, really brutal deaths. But St. Lucy is often depicted with a plate of eyes, and it said that her eyes were gorged out when she was killed. Now, because of the plate of eyes, she's associated with people that suffer from eye disease, but spiritual root workers, occultists, magic practitioners around the world work with St. Lucy for a higher vision, the third eye, you know, like divination and seeing what's going on. So St. Lucy is associated with second sight. Again, St. Lucy, one of the most marvelous of the saints, St. Lucy, she is often shown with a plate, holding a plate with eyes. Again, her eyes were gouged out, which had a real brutal death. But the eyes are associated with second sight. So if you ever want to know what's really going on in a hidden situation, if you're not able to see what's going on in a situation, and you need confirmation and you need to know, believe me, you talk to St. Lucy and she will make it very clear what is going on. One method of working with her is if you have her altar, you could take 2 white stones and paint them whatever eye color you want. They could be black eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes, doesn't matter. So you take a white stone, let's say you're going to go with brown eyes. You paint a brown dot and then a little black dot in the center, and you have painted in, you know, a little 2-hour project, you've painted 2 eyes that you can place upon a plate. Now, you could also, this plate with eyes not only could sit upon her altar, but it can be placed beneath the bed. And this is the spell that I had talked about back in 2014. You place the eyes beneath the plate of eyes. Those eyes, they represent her eyes. So you have St. Lucy's eyes on that plate. Again, her eyes were gouged out. That's why they're on the plate. And you put it under your bed and you petition St. Lucy to give you a dream. Again, dream magic is very ancient. Goes all the way back to incubation, sleep temples, and Egypt, and in Greece, and everything else, healing temples, they're all known about. And then, some of the Renaissance magical lore, and on up to today, people have been using dreams to communicate with spirits. I mean, if you look at any ancient culture, they're using dreams to communicate with spirits and deities. Even in the Bible, it's all over the place. Everything from St. Joseph interpreting dreams for the Pharaoh and everything else. It's all over the lore. Communication through dreams. But that is one way to do it, is to place St. Lucy's eyes beneath your bed and go and sleep and try to have a dream. Now, dream magic, you need to be able to remember your dreams before you really start using this method. You could also use 2 stones of whatever aspect of your life it is. So you could place 2 rose quartz stones upon a mirror or upon a plate if you want to ask about your love life. Or you could place chrysoprase. You can go by colored stone or whatever. There's so many things you can do. But yeah, St. Lucy is for divination, second sight, seeing the truth of a situation. Her name, Lucy, means light. It comes from lux, light, Lucy. In Spanish, luz means light. And her feast day is December 13th. And, you know, to me, the saint calendar, it's kind of like a necromantic calendar. You know, working with the saints that are your spiritual allies on their feast days, just to give offerings and celebrate them. And also your own dead, to remember their birthdays or days of death of your own dead, and to honor them at your own altar. I think working with the dead is very important in magic. And the saints, it's all tied together. So, Saint Expedite is very good for quick results. Saint Lucy for divination and second sight. Saint Barbara keeps away the wicked and drives them away from you. And Saint Alex, by the way, or San Alejo, is the saint for getting rid of things, driving away problems, getting rid of your negativity, or moving people or things out of your life. San Alejo or Saint Alex. And I made a video on St. Alex about a month ago. So it's important to have protectors, to have spirits that can stand there and stand guard over you. Saint Joseph is excellent for finding work. Saint Joseph the worker, and also the patron saint of fathers. And also, Saint Anthony is an amazing saint. Saint Anthony of Padua. Saint Anthony of Padua is often worked with to find lost objects. If you lose your car keys, if there's anything lost, you will find your lost object asking Saint Anthony. And Saint Anthony also helps you to find your way. What Saint Anthony, like, what if we're lost and we don't know the right choice? We don't know what to do. So if we don't know what to do in a situation, we don't know, should I do this or that? I'm kind of lost, right? You know what I mean? Saint Anthony can help you to find what you're looking for, to find the right decision, to find the right way. So Saint Anthony is a very positive energy, and he helps to guide us when we're lost and we don't know where to go or what to do or what needs to be done. Saint Anthony can help us to find our way. So again, a very powerful spiritual ally. Saint Peter has the keys. St. Peter has the keys. We all know that St. Peter at the pearly gates, right? He's got the keys. Well, he is the gatekeeper. St. Peter can be called upon to open the doors for you, the doors of opportunity. If you feel blocked in your life, then St. Peter, and placing keys upon his altar, and calling upon St. Peter to open the doors of opportunity. So people talk about road opening, and road opening is actually not a hard thing to do in magic if you have this powerful spiritual ally of St. Peter. So whatever your religion, whatever your perspective on the dogma of the church, whatever, it does not matter if you are a pagan or if you come from, if you're a Hindu or whatever your tradition, or you're agnostic or whatever tradition that you come from, the saints are effective. They answer your call. They're not going to judge you by your religion. So a lot of people think, ooh, St. Peter at the gates, but he's the door opener, right? A lot of people work with St. Peter to open up the doorway of opportunity if we're feeling blocked, to open up to where we could receive the blessings, and also to lock the door away from negative people, to lock the door from everything that is foul or bad, everything we're trying to get rid of. So right there, you could see a lot of things that we can do working with the saints. So it's absolutely amazing. Now, I said that today I would talk about how to make a talisman. First of all, let's talk about how do you work with a saint. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say that there are a lot of people work with saints because of something they're struggling with at the moment, or they need help in parts of their lives. So that's fine. So you don't have to pick a saint based on your name, which I'll get into, or a saint based on your birth date, or a saint based on your profession, which those are things that people use, kind of like some people use certain timing to find Shem angels based on their chart. A lot of people do that. Lazar Lenain does that, the science of the Kabbalah. But also with the saints, people have name saints, professional saints. But it's okay to just work with a saint that governs something that you need. Saint Barbara, we all need protection. So it's a good idea to light a candle and just talk to her and ask her if she'll work with you. Saint Barbara is a spiritual ally. So that's a need. If you need work, St. Joseph. If you need to drive away and keep away negativity, St. Alexius. If you need road opening, St. Peter. You need quick results, St. Expedite. So what is a basic way? Oh, and then also your name. If your name is Mark, then St. Mark is your name saint. Or if your name is John or Paul or Peter or Sarah, and there's Sarah la Kali, which is an interesting saint. By the way, she's depicted as, she's got dark skin or black skin, Sarah la Kali, and she has this whole veneration, and she's the patron saint of the Romani people. And Sarah la Kali, some people associate her with the Hindu goddess Kali. So it's really interesting, Sarah la Kali. But if your name's Sarah, then Sarah la Kali, that could be one of your name saints, or if your name's Lucy or whatever else. Apart from your name, and in traditional Catholic or Orthodox cultures, your name day is basically, that was like your birthday, the feast day of the saint every year. That's your name, so that's the day that you would celebrate. There's also the spirit of, or the saint of your profession. So for example, Saint Anthony not only helps us to find our way, not only helps us to find lost objects, but is also the patron saint of mail carriers. So as an example, if you're a mail carrier, you could talk to St. Anthony at any time to help you with your work, because what you do expresses what the saint's energy is. You express the saint's office in the world. So it's, I think that they have a vested interest in us doing it well. For example, St. Lawrence helps cooks to find opportunities, better employment, perhaps to help with some of the workplace drama. St. Lawrence is the patron saint of cooks. The interesting thing about St. Lawrence, a lot of these saints had horrible deaths, But the story of St. Lawrence, who's the patron saint of cooks, is that they roasted him alive, like they lit a fire and roasted him. St. Lawrence was said to have turned and said, "Hey, I think I'm done on this side. You need to turn me over." So that's the story of, St. Lawrence, patron saint of cooks. So this saint can help you if you're a cook to find work, to help you with workplace drama within reason. He doesn't need to be brought into your petty little stuff. But if you're worried about losing your job or you need more money or better opportunities, go to St. Lawrence and he'll help you to be a better cook and to learn the trade. So whatever your profession, if you're a mail carrier or whatever it is, Saint Amand is the patron saint of bartenders and people that brew alcohol. So even if it's a hobby, Saint Amand, and he loves to have an offering of beer. Any kind of alcohol is really good with the saints. But beer to Saint Amand, he's the patron saint of bartenders and of winemakers. You could offer wine to Saint Amand. He's the patron saint of hospitality. So if you're in the hospitality industry, whatever that may be, if you're if you work at a bar, you've got Saint Amand's got your back with what you need. Saint Zita is the patron saint of wait staff or servers, people that are servers at restaurants that they make their living by tips. Saint Zita can help you to maybe increase your tips. So there's the patron saint of your profession. And then there's also just working with a saint by need. All right, we've talked enough about this aspect of this. We get the picture. There's different types of saints that you can call them up and magic can start happening in your life. All right, so how do we get started? First of all, it's important to research the saint, to learn what you can about their history and their life. So it's important, with any kind of contact, whether it be an angel or a goddess from Greece or a saint, of the Catholic Church, whatever it is, it's important to research the person, learn what you can about the saint's history. What colors are associated with the saint? For example, Saint Anthony, his color is often seen to be brown. And Saint Anthony was a Franciscan friar, by the way. Saint Anthony was actually born Fernando de Bulhos, and his name was Fernando. And he was in a wealthy family in Lisbon, Portugal. And Saint Anthony, this was in the 1200s. So the 13th century, 1200s, St. Anthony from a very early age was very devoted to the divine, helping others, serving others. And he didn't really care about all the material things. He wanted to help the poor. He wanted to serve and reach closer to God. And so he eventually joined a monastery under the rule of St. Benedict. But he heard about the newly formed St. Franciscan order, and St. Francis of Assisi, the founder of the Franciscans, was a contemporary. They actually knew each other, which is later on in the story. They knew each other. But he joined the Franciscans and went off to Morocco. He got ill, and there was sea problems. It's funny how a big wind happens and you end up in a different place. And he ends up in Italy. And St. Anthony he doesn't want anything to do with the world or pride. He has such great learning, but he was so humble. He was so devoted to learning, but he was so humble. He retreated from the world, and he lived in a cave. But some Dominicans came, and they were expecting the Franciscans to preach. And the head of the friary decided that St. Anthony, by the way, he took the name from Anthony of Egypt. Long story, Fernando became Anthony of Padua. So he came and preached, and his eloquence of speech he just had crowds just listening to his speech, hanging on his every word because of his eloquence and his learning. And he was able to give life to the spiritual teachings of what he was talking about. So St. Anthony is also associated with eloquence and being a preacher. He died at the age of 35. And St. Anthony was canonized as a saint within a year. So let's think of it this way. Something happens to us when we die, right? Happens to all of us. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist or a Buddhist or whatever you are. All of us are going to die. Wherever you're born, we're all going to die one day, right? Something happens to everybody, irrespective of religion or whatever else. I look at it like this. This holy man died, and within a year, his spirit was somewhere. Within a year, he was canonized as a saint, and people started praying to him and asking him for help. Yeah, I think St. Anthony is St. Anthony. I think that he's around helping people still. He's a powerful being. I mean, that's just my own opinion. I try not to push like dogma or beliefs. Sometimes I, kind of share my opinion. It's interesting. There's so many things we could speculate. I believe in reincarnation. I'm a pagan, by the way. Totally different than like what you would think someone working with saints, a pagan that tends to believe in reincarnation. But I think some spirits can be guides to humanity. And they just keep going and they keep guiding us. But anyways, just total speculation, personal gnosis, unverified, whatever. Anyways, back to the story. Within a year, he was canonized as a saint, and they built a church, a cathedral dedicated to him within a year. It was finally, within a year, they were working on the church, and it took them till 1310 to finish the construction. But that was in Padua, Italy. But in Lisbon, Portugal, his birthplace, there's a cathedral in Lisbon, Portugal, that has his birthplace, supposedly. And if you go down into the crypt, I haven't been, I want to go. If you go down into the crypt below, you can see his birthplace. So there's constant, like, worshipers or people giving reverence, looking at the place that St. Anthony was born. But people all over the world are calling him, St. Anthony, I can't find my keys. St. Anthony, I've lost this. St. Anthony, I've lost my way. I don't know what to do. Where do I go? What do I do? What am I supposed to do now? That is an important aspect of St. Anthony. And not only does St. Anthony associated with mail carriers as a profession, by the way, but St. Anthony, yes, governs a mail carrier profession. I mention that because there's a viewer that is a mail carrier that I mention it. But also St. Anthony is not only about lost objects, but finding our way or finding what to do. Okay, so how do you work with a saint? They have a color. St. Anthony, brown. Makes sense because he was a friar. He was a friar, with the brown, robe. So brown and a candle. You light a candle when you pray, right? So it's good to have an image of whatever saint and an altar cloth matching the color of the saint. For St. Expedite, red. For St. Anthony, brown. For St. Lucy, white. For San Alejo, blue, or whatever. St. Cyprian, purple. All right, you got the colored altar cloth, and it's good to have an image. Either a statue, or a holy card, which are very cheap. They're called holy cards. They're just like a little card with an image of the saint and a petition on the back. You could buy holy cards like really cheaply online. They're so cheap. Or You could print the image of the saint off a printer, cut it out, and get a glue stick. Here, let me see here. All right. If you get you just a candle like this, you could, if you don't have all the fancy schmancy stuff, these are expensive. These are what I use, but these are pricey. So I'm telling you an alternative. San Expedito, Saint Expedite. But there's an alternative. You can just get a glass encased candle at the dollar store or Walmart. Plain glass encased candle. This also goes for, what if you can't find the saint? What if you can't find the particular saint or an image you like? Just go get a white glass encased candle, or you can do the color. Print the image of a saint and get a glue stick, cut it out, and just tape it on. What do you think this is? This is glue. Think about it, y'all. This is paper with glue on it. That's all it is. There's an adhesive. It's not going to hurt anything. Get you just a glass encased candle for $1. Print the image of the saint. Glue stick it on. Light the candle. You've got your petition candle. Or, you can do that for $1 or $2. Or you can buy this for $13 like I do. I don't know why. So, image of the saint. I like to have a statue. A glass of water and a candle. It's good to put, when you're making an altar, I tend to be more of like an in-my-head, cerebral kind of guy. I'm not really an artsy type of person, But, I've learned that it's good to set things in a geometrical pattern. So what I like to do, just like with Saint Expedite, I would show you my altar, but you have the image, a glass of water, and a candle. Now, you could pray one time, and also food offerings. There's also food offerings. You could offer coffee, a shot of rum, a shot of whiskey. You'll do very well with any kind of alcohol shot. Cigars. Anyways, yeah. Basically, light a candle, call the saint, tell the saint what you want, and, that's basically it. The way that through offerings and making requests, and then with the understanding that once you get whatever you're asking for granted, you'll give a larger offering. So there's the offering and prayer approach, which we'll talk about first. How many times do you pray? You could pray one time with maybe some food offerings. Offer a slice of cake or an apple, a cigar, shot of rum, or glass of coffee. A flower associated with a saint, like a lily for St. Anthony, or red flowers, or whatever. So you could just make your request with an offering and say, hey, once you grant me this, I'll give you an even bigger offering. You can use that approach. Another approach, and do you pray? You could just pray one time. I would leave an offering if you're just going to do a one-time request. Or you could repeat the prayer. And this repetition is traditional with the saints. Michelle says, do you ever offer meat, like a piece of steak? I personally don't. With the dead, or with anything, I don't think. With the dead and with the saints, I offer things like fruit, coffee, nuts. From my practices back in hoodoo and still today, and some other things that I practice, not adding salt. I've never really paid attention to the salt rule, really, with the saints. But yeah, just like fruit and nuts and things like that. So one way is or you could repeat it for 9 days. That's a novena. So these 7-day candles or whatever, these 9-day candles, you light the candle every day. I like to light a little incense. Instead of the candle just burning, go in there and light some incense, say the prayer to the saint, repeat it 9 days in a row. It's a discipline. Another approach is to pray the saint's prayer before the candle, burning continuously once an hour for 9 hours. You can do that. If you want to do your whole novena very quickly, you can just pray once an hour for 9 hours, making 9 prayers. Or if you really want to be pushy, but not too pushy, you could repeat it once an hour for 9 hours for 9 days. Do you need to leave it burning all the time? Traditionally, yes. A lot of like really hardcore people are like, if you're doing a 7-day candle with the saint, it needs to burn continuously, and set your request under it, by the way. You can set your request under it. But if you're worried about fire, you could set it in a bowl of water around it, or you can have like a foil baking sheet with like sand or something in it, where if it broke, like if the wick, why would it break? You could say it's a bad omen, or it could be all kinds of stuff, resistance in the astral realm. It could also be that the wick is right here, and then the wick is like on the side of the candle, things happen. But if you put it in water, you have like a baking tray, like you put like a turkey or something in, I don't know. Put sand in it, set the candle, set the image, and you have that. Black Hawk. That reminds me of a Black Hawk bucket, working with him, but anyways, so saints can also be worked with in other ways. So remember I talked about the geometrical pattern of having your statue, glass of water, novena candle, making a triangle. Statue, glass of water, novena candle. In the center of that, you can burn some incense and hold the amulet or the medal of the saint in the incense smoke, calling on the saint to empower the medal, putting the oil of the saint on the medal or talisman. So again, talismans in the Picatrix, talismans in the Key of Solomon, talismans everywhere you go, they tend to be empowered by holding the talisman in the incense smoke. So a triangle represents manifestation. So having this threefold setup, a saint statue, glass of water, novena candle, makes a triangle. Statue, glass of water, novena candle. In the center, you put incense, and again, hold the talisman in the incense smoke. How do you make a saint talisman? Well, there are different ways. It could be an image of the saint. You could create an image using one of the methods of Agrippa, where you use the letters that represent your goal. I mean, you could do dollar signs for money, 2 hearts for love, a 3-leaf clover for luck, a horseshoe for good luck. Use your imagination, or you can create a sigil to represent your purpose, or draw a picture of your purpose, or whatever you use, whatever. Create a sigil that just represents your goal. The sigil here does not represent the spirit. This sounds like modern, sigil magic. It kind of is, but it's also found in Agrippa. Create a representation of your goal, and inside a double ring, and around it put a petition, "O Saint, whatever, grant this in request," around it, it's like the PGM. This is ancient technology. This could be a paper talisman even, that you anoint the edges and the center with the oil of the saint, hold it in the incense smoke, and empower talismans, your St. Christopher medal, whatever, cleansing. A few years ago, well, like 10 years ago, I made a video on how to make a saint medal, how to consecrate a saint medal. This is like 10 years ago. I said take a bowl of water, put holy water in it, put the saint medal in it, and you can use Florida water. I like to use a combination of spring water, Florida water, and holy water from a church and mix them together. So Florida water, spring water, and holy water from a church. You can use whatever. But you should cleanse the candles, cleanse your talismans. You can take a screwdriver and you have to really push, dig a hole. You take a screwdriver and bore a hole down the side, and you can pour oil of your intentions or oil dedicated to the saint into the hole. So that's one way to do that, to fix your candles. I'd get a little Florida water mixed with a little holy water and spring water is what I like to do. Wipe down the candle to cleanse it because it's got energies in it from the store. Florida water is very popular in hoodoo and in different Caribbean traditions. It's actually like it's a cologne basically, but a lot of people use it to work with the dead or to cleanse. A lot of people like to take a little Florida water, rub their hands, and place it at their third eye, and then shuffle their tarot decks so that they're touching their decks with spiritually pure hands and to open up their third eye. This is magic. I mean, it's found everywhere. But yeah, take St. Expedite candle, for example. Take a screwdriver and bore a hole down it, and then you can pour the oils, okay, of the saint or the intention, and fix your candle that way. So that is how you can fix your candle. So we talked about the offering method, hey, Saint so-and-so, I have a request, here's a glass of coffee, right? We talked about the construction of saint talismans and how to set up an altar for making a saint talisman. Saints can also be used to empower your spells. So they can just empower. Think of it this way. When you're casting a spell like witchcraft, a lot of it is focusing your intent and your focus and your willpower and your faith, which, by the way, is traditional. It's found in like ceremonial magic way back in Agrippa. That is effective. But as you're working the magic at the saint's altar, that saint is also sending his power, his or her power, into that working. So you're able to do magic together. This can be poppets. Remember that triangle formation I mentioned where you have a statue, glass of water, candle to the saint, and you burn incense and hold the talisman or the medal of the saint to empower the saint talisman? Well, in the same way you could put a scrying stone, which I haven't really tried that with saints, but you could. It looks kind of like the triangle and the scrying thing. But also you could put what's going to become a spiritual bath in the center. So let's say that you're working with St. Peter to open up opportunities for you and to open your roads. Well, you get some road opening herbs, you boil them in some water, strain the herbs, okay? Strain the herbs out. Or let's say you're working with St. Alex, who's the saint of driving away evil, getting rid of negative people, situations. Alejo, Alex, in Spanish, San Alejo. Alejo sounds like alejarse, to drive away. By the way, this saint magic's very popular in Latin America. But San Alejo drives away evil. So you can empower a spiritual bath. A lot of us use spiritual baths here and there. It's a common, popular form of magic, spiritual baths. And it's a great technology. Whether you're trying to cleanse away evil or get rid of curses or jinxes with spiritual baths or bring in abundance and prosperity or love or good luck, spiritual baths are powerful in themselves, just working the herbs, reciting psalms or whatever. But on top of that, you can add the power of a saint. And how you do that is, let's say you're going to do a cleansing. So you take hyssop, rue, and some rosemary or whatever, right? Or for love, rose, damiana, or whatever, right? So we're going to do a cleansing bath. You put the herbs, you put the herbs, actually fresh herbs are better. You put the herbs into a pot of water, boil them to make a tea. Then you strain it. You strain it. If you don't strain it, you're going to stop up your bathtub. So this is what you're going to make a spiritual bath. You pour it over your head and you cleanse or do your spiritual bath. But before you do that, you can take your saint statue, San Alejo, that drives away evil. Saint statue, glass of water, candle. In the center, put the spiritual bath. Light the candle. Maybe give an offering. San Alejo, I call upon you to empower this cleansing bath with your power to drive away all the bad stuff, right? Or Saint Joseph, empower this bath with employment opportunities. Saint Barbara, empower this bath with your protection, and all my enemies will, when they strike at me, they'll crumble. Saint Lucy, empower this bath so that my psychic awareness will be open, or my eyes will be open to the truth of this situation. You could do the same thing with floor washes and empowering incenses, all kinds of stuff. So the saints can be used in magic if you're working with poppets or you're making floor washes, any kind of magic, conjure bags. There are so many things you can do with saint magic that nobody's talking about anywhere. Like if you go look it up online, it's not like you just see this all over the place, And it's ridiculous because it's so simple. A conjure bag, we all know what a mojo hand is. Take a bag, you put in roots, and you put in stones and petition papers, personal concerns, whatever, right? And, you empower the bag, holding it over the incense smoke, reciting psalms, or whatever you do, right? You anoint it with the die shape, with the oil, representing your intention, all of that. Well, you can do that with the saint. You can get a little saint medal of the saint and have it like a little charm, that little saint medal attached to the bag, and the color could be the color of the saint, like a red mojo hand for Saint Expedite, or a brown one for Saint Anthony of Padua, a green one for Saint Joseph, or whatever else, a white one for Saint Lucy. So having the color, the ingredients match your intention, and a little medal of the saint, once again, holding the saint conjure bag in the incense smoke, calling on the saint to empower it. So you can do conjure bags with the saints as well. And you can do dream magic. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do. These are powerful allies. So let's take a look at offerings just a second. What is an offering? I'm going to give you this bread. I'm going to give you this wine. I'm going to give you this candle, right? Well, what does that even do? It's not like spirits are just dying of starvation and they're going to wither up if they don't eat a piece of physical bread. No. But another way to look at it is that spirits are in this higher realm, right? Spirits, they go through matter, they go through objects. They're not really attached to our realm. Offerings have vital energy that I personally think acts as an intermediary between spirits and matter, or matter as we understand. It's just how I see it. The vital energy found in living organisms, whether they be plants or animals. I don't use meat, but animal sacrifice is an ancient practice of worship in Egypt, Babylon, even in the Old Testament, Greece. The Druids did sacrifice, the Norse, all over the world. So why was blood or bread or wine needed for Zeus or anything else? Well, it has a vital energy from living things that I think that spiritual forces are able to interact with our planet, to get closer to us. I don't know how to describe it. It's just a theory, but it's an ancient practice. Ancient polytheistic religions were transactional often. You would ask for something, but you would give something. It's like an energy exchange. But I think in a certain way, the spirits do consume the offerings and then use that energy to somehow interact with our world more. Totally just my speculation. I don't want anybody to listen to just my opinions on things as truth at all, at all. Just my opinions and metaphysical speculations and guesses. But I share them. The feast days. Every saint has a feast day. So it's a wonderful time to not ask for anything, but just make a beautiful offering to the saint because it's the saint's special day. Saint Lucy, December 13th, Saint Expedite, April 19th, or, Saint Anthony, June 13th, or whatever else. So, let me see here. You can write a request to your saint, and you can sprinkle it with money drawing powder if you're looking for wealth. Let's say you've got a job application printed off or whatever. Some people still like the physical things. You can set it on St. Joseph's altar or whatever and sprinkle some prosperity powder on it and call on St. Joseph to help you. So the saints are dead humans. They're the holy dead, not the only. They're sages from all religions. They're Buddhist saints and Hindu saints. They're Taoist immortals. Every tradition around the world has a special type of dead that aren't dead. They continue to guide us. So these are human beings that died, and so they're humans. This is, in my opinion, a kind of divine necromancy. Saint Cyprian is the patron saint of magic. Anyways. So hopefully this gets people started a little bit. Like I said, if you want to work with St. Anthony, get a brown altar cloth, buy a statue or an image, buy a St. Anthony candle, one of those 7-day candles I recommend, and a glass of water, statue or image. It could be a holy card. It could be an image that you print off and frame. Image of the saint, glass of water, candle. Light it. Just call up St. Anthony. Hey, I want to work with you. Will you give me a sign that I can work with you? Or just go ahead and ask him for something. St. Anthony, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. Right? Repeat this 9 days. You can do it once with a food offering or whatever. But repetition is good. And 9 days, a novena. That's what the word novena means. It's 9. It seems to really help things. Saint Expedite, the way that I work with him is I do, like I said, his image, glass of water, and his candle in a triangle formation. And basically, I make my petition for 9 days, and once it manifests, I offer him Sara Lee pound cake and um, red flowers, and supposed to do a public thank you. Um, but yeah, it's gonna be good, and I plan to go a lot more into Saint Magick, and I'm kind of returning to my interest back in the day, you know. It's funny, I'm a pagan. People can think whatever they want about it or dislike it, you know. I'm a pagan. But I work with saints and I work with Shem angels, and it's very effective and it's very powerful. And you're not missing anything. And it's not that I'm afraid of demons or I don't or whatever else. It's just I feel really happy with these energies, and they're very effective. And yeah, I think that whatever works works. In my own magical practice, I mostly work with pagan gods and goddesses, and I work with the dead, and I work with saints, and I work with angels, and I work with some other spirits. Yeah, I work with some other kinds of spirits that... Anyways. So yep, I guess that's basically it. Hopefully that gave y'all, you know, my basic way to do it is do the novena with a light offering, like one lily, a glass of water, and candle to St. Anthony, with a promise of a bigger offering once it's accomplished. Once you find your object, for example, with St. Anthony, give him a big old bouquet of lilies. You know, a shot of rum, and you know, like really. So I look at the initial offering as like, hey, can you help me out? Little bit of offering, glass of water, candle, some incense, maybe one flower, whatever. It's not about being stingy. It's just saying like, hey, can you help me? But once you get it, you have to show gratitude. With Saint Expedite, it said that if you don't give him his offerings quickly, once you get it, he'll take it all away. I wouldn't risk it. You know, that's what a lot of people say. But yeah, it's important to show gratitude. So once you get the thing, I would really show gratitude, and also helping other people, charity, things like that. So I was originally going to do this video for Patreon, but I realized this subject matter is so important and can help so many people. Not that I'm any grand expert on Saint Magick. You know, I explore all these different traditions, and I'm obsessed, and I practice, and I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and I love to share my journey, and I love to share anything that can help other people. And I think this can really help other people. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that I'm not some grand expert on Saint Magick, but I understand a little bit, and I think it's very meaningful and very impactful, and I think you'll definitely get some results. So, hopefully, y'all enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to, you know, all the stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment. It really does help. Like, it helps. And also, please consider supporting my Patreon, because half of my videos are on Patreon, half of my videos are on here. But anyways, I really appreciate y'all. Let me see if I have any comments here. Okay, let's see here. This says, do you have any spell for me? I mean, I don't know what you need. Let's see here. Do you ever offer meat? I don't personally. Alcohol, coffee, fruit, candles, stuff like that, you know. Flowers. Flowers, think of the life energy, living things. The flowers have life energy. The food, the fruit, it all has vital energy that somehow the saints, I think that they do consume that energy, and it helps them to kind of get their job done, their work. Just my own opinion. Anyways, alright, that's it, y'all. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you. Please show support if you enjoyed this. Subscribe, share, like, and I will see y'all in the next video. Alright, have a great day, y'all. Thank you so much.